Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We're on episode 9 of Violet Evergarden. And man, this second half of the season has been pretty rough. I'm not gonna lie. Episode 7 had me in tears, and episode 8 just gutted my soul. And I don't know where we're going to from here, but it's probably gonna be sad for a while longer because now Violet is having to deal with. We've had the flashback of her and Gilbert, and it ended right as Gilbert got shot. And I went back and rewatched the episode. I rewatched it while editing it, and I'm like, did he get shot in the eye? Did it just like nick his face there? I mean, either way, it's not good because they're battered and bloody. And then obviously there's the bomb and everything that we assume blows up right after he tells her he loves her. And yeah, I feel so bad for Violet because we've spent this show just masterfully setting up the heartbreak. It's like, oh, we start out with this girl. She's kind of robotic in how she interacts with people and socially. And we'll just slowly build her up coming out of her shell and understanding what love is and what it feels like to be in love and being able to put a word to that emotion. And then right as we let her feel that, we'll dump the news on her that the person that she cares about most in the world is presumed dead. And she just told Leon back in episode 6 that she couldn't live without that person. And it's like, it's really sad. And so we still have several episodes of this series left and 2 movies. I'm so excited. They just announced on Netflix that the second film, because I saw when I started this series, I was like, okay, how many episodes is it? I'm like, okay, it's 13 episodes. And I was like, okay, there's 2 movies and 1 movie was already on Netflix. And then I was like, oh, darn it. I was like, the other movie isn't out yet. And it just came out last year. So, sometimes, especially with movies that are in a different language that have to be translated and have subtitles, I'm like, it'll probably be a while before it comes out. And so I was like, well, I'll at least get the series and the 1 movie done and looked at and watch all of that. And then I guess I'll just have to wait on the other. But no, I'm going to get to do the whole series as a whole. As somebody that likes closure, I'm like, okay, good. Oh, it'll all be done. So I feel really good about that. I'm excited to see 2 movies after this series. That'll be really, really cool because I like watching anime movies, so that'll be a lot of fun. But I'm not ready for more pain, and I feel like there's going to be more pain. So I don't know. But I feel so bad for Violet because, damn it, and Gilbert's so wonderful. I'm like, he's like a damn fairy tale prince. He's like her Prince Damien. And it's just not fair. Just not fair, right? So let's do this, shall we? We're going to start episode 9 of Violet Evergarden and just rip off the Band-Aid here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Man, I'm glad I got a little uplifting there at the end because I was feeling so bad for Violet. I love this show in terms of what it does with just grief and getting over like the sins of your past. And because the whole time with the conversation with, I wonder what Catalina did, because he said Catalina and him were burning. So I'm like, what was her part in all of this? And what has she done? But we don't know. But Hodgins, I kept waiting for the shoe to drop the whole episode. I'm like, Hodgins was a soldier too. He's a veteran. He went through the same thing. He was in the same battle that Gilbert and Violet was. So I was thinking the entire time, Hodgins has to have the same remorse and same regrets and the same feelings too. And right at the end when he started tearing up, I'm like, yep, that's it. It's the same. And oh God. And and the fact that the brother hired her to write the letter, I've had family that have served in the military, and my grandfather was stationed in World War II in the Navy. And so when he came back from the war, he had kind of dealt with the same thing, even growing up, because he was really old when I was a kid. He had my dad really late in life. And so, even as a kid, I remember just like things that you didn't talk about because it brought up emotions and feelings that he didn't want to like look back on. And that idea of burning and just of knowing you have all these burns. And like Hodgins said, it's going forward with it. And you can't erase the past. Because Catalina is like, why would you tell her that? She's like, why would you tell Violet that and stir up all these memories. And he's like, she's got to deal with it at some point because we all do. He's like, we can't just bottle it up inside and act like it doesn't exist. Because he's like, then it will consume you because it'll all eventually just consume you and burn on out, right? So Hodgins is like, eventually we've got to talk about it, and you have to communicate. And so I'm so glad when she barges in at the very end and talks to him, it's like, yes, you need to communicate with him because he's someone that can relate to you. And the fact that Gilbert went to him and told him to take care of her, it all ties back to the first episode. This whole episode was tying everything around in a really full circle way, which is kind of crazy because we still have 4 episodes left. I was like, especially when they did the thing with Leon, and I'm glad Leon is traveling the world. That's so awesome that he was like climbing the mountain, like getting to travel. I love that. But like when they showed Leon out and about and they showed Damien and Charlotte and they showed the playwright and Oscar and him and his play getting, put on stage. When they were doing all of that, I was like, man, that's really cool and all, but I feel like we're already coming full circle and we still have 4 episodes to go and 2 movies. So I was like, man, thrown off by it, but it was all just bringing around the idea that Violet has been a major impact on people and that she has impacted. And the fact that that was the first letter she ever got, I was going to be like, if you make it like a post-mortem letter from Gilbert, I won't be able to take it. Not after this episode. No. So I'm glad that it was Erica and Iris, that it was Erica that wrote the letter. And I love that them being friends, they're like, look, we don't know what to do. We obviously can't relate to you and what you're going through, but we want to be here for you. We are waiting on you. So whenever you're ready, take your time, do what you have to do, but we'll be here for you when you decide to come back. Like, we're not going to push you. We're not going to force you, but we'll be here for you when you decide that you want to come back. And that's so good. Because I was like, she doesn't need to be forced to do anything. That's like the last thing you want to do with her being in like the mental state that she is. But just friendship, offering to be there for someone if they need it. Like I don't want to push you, but, and I kind of definitely relate to Erica's thing, because it's like when you have a friend that's in trouble, you want to be there for him, but it's like, what do you do? How do you act? You don't want to overstep your boundaries. And for everybody, it's different. Some people want that person clinging to them in the moment, and others want to distance themselves. So when they're grieving, some people need a community and need people around them, and other people just need to be by themselves. But I'll be honest, I was really scared for a second when she was grabbing her own throat. I was like, is she going to try to choke herself out and try to kill herself or break her own neck? And for a second, I thought that that's what she was trying to do. And I thought that Benedict or somebody was going to come barging in and stop her. But I'm glad that it didn't go the melodramatic route like it could have. She stops herself and thinks, no, that's not going to solve anything. I thought she was going to rip the dog apart, and she doesn't do it, because at the end of the day, despite everything that she's done, Violet is not a violent person. And in that regard. And so she can't destroy the dog. She can't hurt herself. It's just, she doesn't know what to do with this grief. And I really thought too, I thought lots of bad things were going to happen in this episode, because I was like, oh, there's the kerosene on the ground. It's going to light a fire. I was like, I kept thinking all these bad things were going to happen. And that sweet old man shows up and tells her they have to deliver the letters that were misplaced. And she, being the kind person that she is, offers to help him deliver the letters. And just when she kneels next to the violets, be someone suitable of that name. Ugh. But man, I was like, okay, Gilbert's doing great. He just got shot in the face. It's not the end of the world. But when they shot his side, I was like, oh no, that's not good. And the sad thing is, she let the one guy go. She let him go. She could have killed him. She was out of ammo, but she let him go. And he kind of looked a little bit like Gilbert, which is, it's kind of the subtext of this show. Both sides look nearly identical to one another, because it's just demonstrating how pointless it all is, right? All the legalese and all the world building and this anti-peace resent movement and this blah, blah, blah. I feel like it's all just put in there in the show as just filler space to just say, oh yes, we're in a war, here's the parties. But it doesn't matter, right? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's fighting who. What matters is the fact that there's this war and people are dying, and it's so pointless, right? And God, her losing her arms, oh my gosh, that was terrible. I'm like, girl, just losing them both. I have a very dark sense of humor, so this is really morbid and awful, but the whole time when the guy threw the grenade, all I could think about was the movie Tropic Thunder. All I could think about in that moment was the movie Tropic Thunder and Ben Stiller, like, using his hands to throw the grenade away and it blowing off his hands. That's all I could think about. I'm awful. I'm the worst. But yeah, and then him telling her that he loves her. And she doesn't know how to process it. And you can tell Gilbert's like, damn it. He wants to tell her more, but God, that hand just dropping there. It gives me some hope that maybe Gilbert is alive because she didn't know what love was. And so she's like, I don't understand what you mean. I don't understand what that is. Why did you say it? And she's trying to, like, using her mouth to try to get to where she can get the bullet out. And it's like, damn. But this gives me hope. I'm still no body, no death. I'm still like, okay, Gilbert, I need Gilbert to be alive because Violet needs to talk to him. She needs to tell him that she knows what love is. And if she has to write it in a damn letter, then it needs to be in a letter. But I need him to know. We all do, right? And then we go back to that opening shot from the bottom of my heart. Ugh, I love you. This show, just pain and her, like, going through the rubble. And I love Hodgins stays out there with her in the rain. Like, he's like, nah, I'm not going to leave you by yourself. I'm going to stay until you decide to come back. And then, yeah, her crying that she doesn't understand. And then he's crying. And it's like, why? And then, of course, they decide to blow up the place. And he saves her by putting himself on top of her. But I don't want him to be dead. I don't want him to be dead. I hate it. I hate it so much. So here's the question, though. Here's the question in all of this. The question is, where do we go to at the last part of the episode? Like, where can we go to at the last part of this series? Obviously, she's already wrote the letter for Spencer and Luculia. I already wrote the letter for them. I'm assuming that she'll probably get hired out to write more letters, and we'll see that. But I want her to confront Dithard again. I do. I want her to go visit Dithard. I want her to see him, and I want them to talk about this, because they really didn't talk about Gilbert's death. I hate saying it because it makes it sound true. They didn't talk about it, and I want, because you know that Gilbert and his brother, despite them having clear different ideologies and feelings towards one another, they're still brothers. They still are family. And they still care for one another, right? So, even though Dithard can be a total jerk and has been really cruel to Violet, he still has to grieve his brother's death in some regard. We established back in episode 1 that he was happy that his dad died. Dithard was. Dithard was happy the father died because it shifted the power dynamics. We don't know that whole parentage, what's going on. But I'm like, you can't tell me Dithard doesn't at least feel like his brother's death is somewhat impactful, right? He has to feel something. Maybe it's anger, maybe it's sadness, maybe it's frustration, but he has to feel some type of emotion. And so I want Violet to confront him because she's now learned what that love means and what she feels about it. So I want her to confront him and talk to him about it. I just need that. I just need that. So yeah, this episode and the symbolism of the plant growing from the rubble, the one piece, the sprig of greenery growing against all the destruction. It's like the one thing that survived, that pushed through, and it's a representation of Violet, of her being the one thing standing from the rubble that made it out, not unscathed, but made it out and still surviving somehow. Hodgins, I really love his character in this episode, especially at the end there when he acknowledges that he knows exactly how she feels. I felt like Benedict, I almost said Bertold. I felt like Benedict would have had a bigger role in this. I felt like they were setting him up to have a bigger role, and maybe they are in the future. That clenching of her fist, that mechanical clenching, it's so good. But I felt like in the last episode, And in episode 7, they were building up Benedict to have a bigger role in Violet coming back, but he just kind of chauffeurs them around, and then he gets distracted with the letter and sprains his ankle because he's wearing the fashionable shoes. So I felt like there was gonna be more to Benedict, and so maybe we've got 4 episodes left, and then the movies. So maybe they are saving Benedict for something because he's been a presence. He's been there. I also like that Hodgins does things with his hands throughout this entire episode. Like, he has them when he talks to Catalina, he has them in his jacket, hiding them. When he's first talking to Violet, they're clenched, like he's bound and determined to make her see what he thinks. But then as he realizes that she's not budging and realizes what state she's in, his hands like relax. And at the very end of the episode, when Violet's like, I'm burning, aren't you too? What do we do? His hands unclench too in that moment as well, and he takes them out of his pockets. So it's almost like he's just relieving himself and able to be himself when his hands are unclenched. It's like a sign that whenever he's not like tensed up or his hands aren't hidden, he's able to be himself. And him saying that Gilbert never thought of her as a war tool, that she was just a normal girl and he was concerned about her future. Yeah, Gilbert, dude. So good. So good. So they've established the whole thing with the insurgents and the anti-peace thing. And they've been slowly hinting at, as the season has gone on, just like laying little breadcrumbs, that while there has been some post-war peace, it's not stable. And that the forces that be, and we got that shot of that one guy that was from the opposition, like looking back with like this vengeful look in his eyes. So I'm like, are they planning these last couple episodes to do like another attack? And the question is, is Dithard going to enlist Violet to be a soldier again? Is he? I don't know. I could see him sticking her with Hodgins, but then I could see him taking her with him. That would be weird. That would give them some moments together, but the idea of, and there's not that closure. That bugs me the most, is when Gilbert says, we'll talk about this later, you've done nothing wrong. There's not closure there, and I want closure. But the idea is that Violet finally accepted that she doesn't have to be a weapon. She doesn't have to be a tool for war. She can be something that's more than that. And being an auto memory doll gives her that capability to move forward with her life and just not forget her past, but to move forward with it, understanding it. And so I'm really worried that if we go back to this conflict and they try to use Violet as a weapon, it's like they're going to try to drag her back to square one. And I'm like, no, we've come so far in the last 9 episodes. Why would you do that? So I don't like seeing Violet sad. I don't like seeing her sad and crying and upset. And this whole flashback with Gilbert has been, and her seeing herself in the reflection of the soldier. And it's funny, we juxtapose from that moment, the soldier in the rain, to back to the auto memory doll shop, and it's all sunny and bright and everything's great. I also love Iris's jacket, by the way, with the cutouts. Some of the fashion in this show is really weird, but I love Iris's navy jacket with the cutouts. It's very, very fashion forward. I know Benedict tries to use his fancy boots, but it's like, dude. And for a second there, I wondered when Catalina was like, shouldn't you go check on her? There was part of me that was like, yeah, I feel like Benedict was going to have a bigger role in this whole thing with Violet, but he hasn't yet. It may still happen. But he seems like, for a second, looking at her like, well, what do you suggest I do? Like, go to her? What does that mean? So it almost seemed like Catalina was suggesting he go comfort her, like, in place of Gilbert. And I'm like, that's a terrible idea. She doesn't want that. And so even Benedict's like, what do you want me to do? No, I've got better things to do. So, but I don't think that was it. It just kind of was hinted at for a second that was maybe how you could take it. But I don't think Benedict would never do anything like that to begin with. And I don't think Catalina was suggesting it. I think she was just suggesting your friends. You were like the first friend she made here, Benedict. So it should be you going to talk to her. But, instead, here we are. The symbolism of this episode, just showing her in the darkness, Violet, the whole time. And I'm like, girl, you could at least sleep on the bed. And then everything being in blood. Like the blood just pouring out of his wounds and on the stairs, and everything is soaking her dress. And him asking about her outfit in the nightmare. And him saying, are you sure you can? And he repeats Dithard's words. He's like, are you sure you can do that with all this blood on your hands, that you can write letters that bring people together? It's like going back to what Dithard said, and that was like been invading her subconscious. And it's like, dude, I felt so much for Violet this episode. I really did. I felt for her. And her finally like getting emotional and screaming. Like the only time we've seen her screaming is when the Major was shot and was injured. Like it's the only time we've seen her show emotion like this. And then, yeah, starting to choke herself. I was like, girl, don't do it. Ugh. I'm just crying instead. Like her finally showing all this emotion. It's just... And then she's like, what can I do if I don't get an order from you anymore? How do I go on? It's so heartbreaking, but it's so powerful too. I don't want him to be dead. I don't want him to be dead, but here we are. And yeah, you know this series is going to end with Violet writing the letter to Gilbert. That's where this series is headed towards. This is where we've been headed towards since episode 1. She's wanted to write him a letter that wasn't a report. And we've built up 9 episodes, and we've got 4 more. And I'm like, that last episode, it better be her writing the damn letter. And the question is, are we going to see the letter, or is it going to end up being in the movies? Is Gilbert going to get the letter? My hope would be that somehow she'd write the letter, it would get to him, he'd see it, and they'd meet up again. Like that's like the best. It's like a video game that has a good ending, bad ending. That's the good ending. But I don't know if we'll get that or not. But this episode, just the animation, God, the animation, everything, the animation, the expressions, seeing Violet be more expressive was so beautiful. She like went from being so robotic in how her face was, and just to looking like sad and surprised and frustrated. Just seeing all these emotions on her face is just, it's so good. And then her seeing like all these people that have influenced her. And then her going back to Hodgins. And then that question, do I have a right to live? And that's the line that gets him. And that's the line that got me. I was like, because that's what this whole time Hodgins was thinking. He's been thinking the same thing since episode 2 when he had the drink with Catalia. He's been thinking the same thing. Yeah, they do have a right to live. My heart. I just need to wrap up in a blanket. I do. God. But this episode was so good. We've got 4 episodes left. I'm really excited about that. So I don't know what's going to happen though, because like I said, it feels like this all came full circle. Like I feel like everything came full circle with her emotions. So where do we go to from here? We've got 4 episodes and 2 movies left. What else do we have to talk about? So that's exciting, but I don't know where we're going to from here. So we shall see. But I hope you all enjoyed this reaction. Please feel free to comment down below. Please no spoilers. But I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 10 of Violet Evergarden. Bye.